Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening. So we are live. We apologize. We are late, I think, by 10 minutes or 12 minutes to be exact. Sorry about that. So, yeah, Connect Africa is back again. Every Thursday, we try to bring an issue, what's going on in the continent, and we analyze it here with my brother, Pan Africanist Lambert Ibitu, is here with us. So today we are going to discuss who is Lieutenant General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. If I am wrong, please correct me, Lambert. Welcome, Lambert, first of all.
Thank you, Malet. As always, it's my big honor to be at Connect Africa, and thank you for the great discussion of today. The choice of the personality to discuss is a very interesting one. You know, Lieutenant General Muhoozi Kainerugaba is quite a stature, not just in Uganda,
Okay.
but as evidenced of recently.
Let me say this. Yeah. It's an interesting true. We are excited. I'm excited as everyone here. So in the past few months, we have seen that it seems that Uganda has been testing the water and kind of preparing the ground in what seems to be there's going to be a change in the political leadership. But let me be very clear on that. It might bring a new face, but not a new blood. Uh, Having said that, the greater Horn of Africa and Africa or the world have seen that General Muhoozi Kainerugaba kind of shifting in this last year, from the military uniform to the tie and suits, and then from the military field to the diplomatic field, and in a very intense and visible kind of campaign, also meeting regional leaders in the Horn of Africa. And his actually diplomatic work, kind of, if that's official, has gone far too extreme, sending out a controversial tweets from his accounts. Now all this is there in the air, but before we go deep, it's really, I think, important. I think it's where the foundation is. Let us know who is Lieutenant General Muhoozi Kainerugaba of Uganda. Give us this biographical sketch. Thank you.
Mallet, how do I discuss a man of that stature in a few sentences? It's a rather difficult one, but maybe I'll just mention the obvious things, some of those that I think we all know. First and foremost, I think what everyone who has heard of Muhoozi knows is that he is a son to President Museveni of Uganda. I think that is the first thing anybody will associate him with. Then the second, if you're in Uganda, you will obviously know that he's the commander of our land forces. But actually, before becoming commander of Uganda's land forces, which is, by the way, the largest contingent within the military of Uganda, he was he's the founder of the Special Forces of Uganda. That is the elite section of Uganda's army. He founded it. He was the first commander of the Special Forces of Uganda, and he has since moved on from there. But those who have been left behind are basically those whom he trained, those whom he introduced, and those whom he mentored. So Muhoozi locally in Uganda is quite a figure. I mean, I think if you ask for my personal opinion, he's the most powerful military figure in Uganda. Actually, most people think that he's the de facto commander of the Ugandan forces. Is the chief of defense forces in practice, although is by rank is commanding the land forces. So that is Muhoozi for you. It's just that he's a military man. So little of him. Of course, he isn't a politician. So there is little we can talk about the politics. We can only speculate later on. But the man Muhoozi is a soldier, is a 3-star general, is a son to arguably Uganda's longest serving president, that is current president of Uganda, President Museveni, and has we have seen on Twitter is become quite outspoken in recent years. But as I will maybe later on reveal to us, it's not always been like that. Mallet, I can't hear you. I think you are.
Okay. Some people
Uh,
are telling me I have echo. Yeah, so tell me if I sound good.
no, I
Gi-
can hear you now.
okay. Give us a little more on that, like his educational background, whether it's in military or something where he studied. Usually, those things are useful.
Of course, for basic education, being a son of a president, he studied in some of the best schools within Uganda. But I think the most interesting bit of his education is, which should be of interest to us, has got to do with his military education, because he has basically spent the last 20 years either in military academies or in the or in the battlefield. So I think the most notable one that I think may be of interest to us is that Muhoozi studied is a graduate of the Sandhurst Academy in the UK. That's of course one of the most elite academies where uh, sitting presidents and the world-known leaders send their children for military training. As we speak right now, I think about a month ago, the son of the president of Rwanda also graduated from the same Sandhurst Academy that Muhoozi, previously graduated from. Then, of course, he has had trainings. I think for me, I'm more focused on his military trainings more than his basic education, because immediately after advanced level education, he went straight to the military. So you can't say he studied in this, in this and that university or something like that. His career of education has basically been training and has been in the military. Also of interest is that he has trained in quite a number of military training schools within Uganda and also outside Uganda. Like I said, the most notable one is the Sandhurst in the UK. Then also he trained in Egypt. He had, I think, a 1 year training in Egypt. Then in a host of other, he has taken a number of military trainings as well in other countries. I think as well in Israel. Then those are the ones that for me come to mind immediately. But in short, Mallet is well educated and well trained as a military officer.
Hmm.
Well, of course, you can't arrive at the rank of lieutenant general unless you have gone through this, some of these most elite military trainings.
Interesting. So
Mm.
let's go now to the Twitter message, this controversial Twitter message. Over the last year, there was this series of provocative foreign affair that I don't know if he's really tweeting on behalf of foreign affair or just it's a personal tweets that he was sending out complicated in a way, I would say, Uganda's foreign relation. And we can take an example, I mean, which is the case, is Ethiopia. He was supporting at some point the Tigrayan rebel forces, and then supporting Egypt in within the Nile, the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam. Is he tweeting? This actually had a consequence, which is followed by the Ugandan ambassador in Addis Ababa has to be summoned by the Ethiopian government. And then we have seen after that the Ethiopian ambassador in Kampala also meeting the Ugandan government. And then very recently, we have seen on his tweets pictures with the prime minister and with his entourage visiting the Air Force in Addis Ababa, in Ethiopia. And so is he tweeting on behalf of himself? Is it something official that he's reflecting the Ugandan government? Uh, what is with those? And then we have seen also tweets immediately after his visit to Ethiopia, changing and preaching peace, which he was really completely siding on one side before. What do you say about this in terms of affecting Ugandan relation with the neighboring countries, and also his personality? I mean, if you are coming to be a diplomat, then or a leader, you cannot be completely one-sided. Lambert, do you hear me? It looks like Lambert's is frozen. I'm sure he will join us shortly. Let's see. Let's read the comment until Lambert join us. I think I don't know what problem he has. He is online. Internet connection is really a problem. But we will not make that a reason and, kind of restrict us from having these programs. We wait, we be patient, and then, have this discussion and create awareness in a way, share ideas, what we know. Yohas Baluku Isagara, he says he is the next president of Uganda. I think he means Lieutenant General Muhoozi. And then Okware Albert, he says our next president of the Republic of Uganda. And then, mostly. Hi. Yes, Lambert, welcome back again.
Thank you. My internet seems to be disturbing.
Okay,
But I think it's okay now.
Did you hear my question or do I have to repeat?
No, I didn't hear. I went over.
Really? Okay. So I was saying he has
and the question that you had said before that I had. I was just
about the Twitter, right? His tweets.
Hello?
Yeah, I hear you. About the tweet, his controversial tweets.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me. My internet is still, I think, I don't
I
know
hear
what's
you. I hear you.
Yeah, but my internet isn't really showing like it's on. So if you can hear me, I think I can just get straight on it.
Yeah, please go on. It's better.
Okay, so you asked if I mean you spoke about his tweets and whether or not they reflect his opinion or that of the government of Uganda.
Yeah, and then
I
the
think
relation for Uganda, affecting Uganda's relation with neighboring countries.
yes, one thing is for sure. At some point, when that became an issue, I remember the spokesperson of the Uganda People's Defense Forces was hosted by BBC, and he said if anything official that comes from UPDF or which reflects the position of the government of Uganda comes through the right channel. So what he was basically saying, which opinion I want to buy, is that the General Muhoozi in his tweets wasn't representing the personal opinion, I mean the opinion of Uganda. I would take it that he was representing his own opinion, which of course looks rather strange, being a high-ranking officer. One thing I want us to appreciate, Mallet, is that when you occupy a big position in any government, usually there is a very fine line between what is your opinion and whether or not your opinion is the same opinion of the institution that you represent. So usually as public figures, you have got to be careful on how to toe that line, because it's easy to confuse, of rather for the public to confuse your personal opinion with your with the position of the institution that you represent. But I think what most people miss in trying to understand, the opinions, whether or not it is Muhoozi's personal opinions, or whether or not he echoes the opinions of the government of Uganda, is the fact that for you to see through these opinions, you've got to look at, to put yourself in Muhoozi's shoes. Muhoozi is a soldier, a serving soldier in the army of Uganda, but also is a son to the president of Uganda. And the third thing you must consider is the fact that this is a man who is being touted as perhaps one of those who could succeed President Museveni, that is, succeed the father. Now, what's happening for you to easily, I mean, you have to look at Muhoozi with respect to those three positions. How do you remain purely a soldier? How do you project your political opinions in opposition? How do you put yourself forward as potentially a candidate for the presidency of Uganda without conflicting with the position that you hold as a soldier? Now, that is a very difficult line that I see Lt.Gen General Muhoozi trying to toe. But for us in Uganda who know that he's one of those who are potentially going to succeed President Museveni, regardless of how it happens, we see his views in a rather different way. Is he playing politics within Uganda? Is he trying to extend his influence outside Uganda? Now, you've got to ask those things. Does he wait until he's no longer a soldier to build that? I mean, that is the difficult terrain that Muhoozi finds himself in. But one thing that is for sure is that if you look back to the beginning of Muhoozi's career over the last few years, you see, we are discussing Muhoozi today only because of, I think, the last 6 months when he began to give his opinions publicly on Twitter in regard to Ethiopia and other international issues. But in Uganda, we have always known Muhoozi to be a very quiet person. Actually, we've known him to be so calm and so quiet and very reserved. Even when you listen to Muhoozi speaking, he goes very calmly. He doesn't, actually, if you listen to him speak audibly like this, it is much different with the kind of person you see in the streets. Now, that is partly the complexity that we are left with when discussing Muhoozi, because this person who is so opinionated, like you see on Twitter, is quite different. You've got to listen to him speak. You've got to listen to him address the public, and you see a calm, calculative person. And then when you see his tweets, you seem to see somebody who is rushy, who seems to be aggressive. That is the complex place we see him. But personally, I think Muhoozi is trying to build a political career, both locally within Uganda, but also to exert his influence within the region of East Africa and, of course, Africa. And in that position is quite finding a challenge balancing his responsibilities and restrictions as a soldier, but also with the desire to express himself as a politician. And that is the rock and hard place that Muhoozi has found himself in. But I think overall, it does not, his opinions, and himself, he will say it, represents his personal position. And we have to take the statement by the government of Uganda, which dissociated itself with the opinions of the general in the last time when they were forced to comment on that. So I think his opinions are basically his, and of course he's using his Twitter handle, and he has a right to say, "I'm giving my personal opinions on these issues," and that is his right, just as everybody else has a right to give his opinions.
Thank you, Lambert, for that. But I still have a question on that. Yes, he has a personal opinion, but while you are preparing and acting as a government entourage and going and visiting, I mean, there's no way you visit leaders or meet leaders of a neighboring country in the region unless you have the title and responsibility from the government. So, don't you think that he's entitled, okay, for his personal opinion, but should that be reflected in his social media?
Like I said, Mallet, that position of trying to be Muhoozi the person, but also to be Muhoozi the potential president of Uganda. Obviously, it is true. If you follow the trend of events, Muhoozi has met almost every major leader within the region. my personal opinion is that I seem to think, although with President Museveni, you can't be so sure what his plan is. But of late, if we go by what we see and hear and what we can perceive from the actions, it seems to appear as if Muhoozi has become President Museveni's diplomatic envoy within the region. Now, you have got to factor that reality into the succession equation within Uganda. It could be, if I'm to speculate, because I know that he has met the president of Kenya, he has met the president of Rwanda, he has met recently of Ethiopia, he's been to Egypt so many times. Actually, I think he has become our country's first diplomat. That tells us within Uganda, and of course the region, somebody was telling me the other day that all these trips by Muhoozi, all these meetings of foreign leaders, and by the way, some of them we never get to know. Because personally, me, I know that Muhoozi is a friend to a number of leaders within Africa. And some of those meetings never get to become public. I think what's happening is that Muhoozi is being introduced to the region, because it's part of the power play of politics within Uganda. Because eventually you've got to have influence within the region, and I see him trying to extend his influence outside. So um, I think the most controversial opinions that he has given previously were on Ethiopia and Tigray. And I think the government of Uganda responded to those tweets, respective as to whether they were the opinion of Uganda as a government or of Muhoozi as a person. And I think we can only trust, unless you have proved otherwise, that those opinions belonged to Muhoozi. But like I said, the struggle for Muhoozi is to separate what he believes to be his personal opinion with the opinion that comes with the associating with the institution that he represents, which is the UPDF as an army, and then of Uganda as a country. And of course, the responsibility of the fact that is meeting regions is meeting leaders within East Africa. But just to sum this up, Malek, this is the whole complexity and the challenge we face in trying to understand the politics, because we have got to factor in politics within Uganda, and then politics within the region, and then we have to factor in the transition equation within Uganda. Now, Muhoozi is certainly, I think 80%, if you ask me, certain to lead Uganda at some point. Maybe that will be a discussion for another day on why I think that is a certainty. But I begin to sit within the regional dynamics of how he's trying to extend influence to Kenya, because you need that eventually, extend influence to Rwanda, you need that eventually, extend influence to Ethiopia, you need that eventually. And also Muhoozi is coming out, Muhoozi seems to be wanting to, because now one thing maybe which we haven't factored is the fact that we forget Muhoozi is a son to Museveni. And if you know Museveni, then you know that Museveni is a big factor within the politics of Africa, within the politics of, if all the time, one of the principles, one of the tenets of his party is actually Pan-Africanism. And it is so rare for you to hear Museveni speak without speaking of Pan-Africanism. Now, one of the things, the challenges Moses has faced as a person growing up is the fact that he's always been overshadowed by the father within Uganda, and then of course in the region. But over the years now, we see that age is catching up with President Museveni, and we can't undo the fact that it's inevitable the years are no longer on President Museveni's side, and that perhaps Uganda is on the precipice of a transition to the next president. Now, Muhoozi has got to come out of the shell, and I think this is partly the game plan within Muhoozi's calculation of how he presents himself to the public. I can assure you, in Uganda, people have been surprised. People keep saying, "Is this man mad? How does he speak like this?" But you see, politics is a rather funny thing. You must find an entry point. Somebody at the height of Muhoozi's, tweeting and giving opinions, somebody commented and said that he seemed to be taking the approach of Trump. If you follow the Trump rise, sometimes the best way to get attention from people is to irritate them. Because some
Yeah.
of the things Muhoozi tweets are really funny. Personally, me, I look at it and I'm thinking, what is
Yeah.
Muhoozi thinking? So you've got to be smarter and to look between the lines that the man is playing politics. And the first thing you need to play politics with is that you've got to get attention of people. And I can assure you, in Uganda, as we speak, Muhoozi has become a household name. Whether you know him, I mean, whether you like him or you don't, somehow there is nobody right now in Uganda who does not know who Muhoozi is and who does not know what potentially Muhoozi wants. So I think the same rationale has been extended beyond Uganda, that is he has got to get the attention of the region because that is significant over time. And then of course, well, it's Museveni's son, and I'm sure he has grown up under the tutelage of Pan-Africanism. He has grown up understanding how to play geopolitics. He has grown up listening and watching the father, you know, play the geopolitics within the region. And I think in his own thinking, it is time that he assumes the same kind of personality. And that's how I see Muhoozi trying to build his political clout within the region. Malta, again, you got to unmute yourself.
I am muted. Sorry. I'm
Okay.
so into this story, I'm telling you.
Mm.
In terms of Pan-Africanism, yes, that's what, President Museveni is. That's what he talk about. And sometimes he's also known for speaking his mind, unfiltered. He talks what he think. I remember his comment one time to Egypt with regards to the dam, that Egypt always preferred to talk outside Africa, while the Nile riparian state is us, like he's telling directly Egypt, come to us, talk to us. So yeah, sure, in terms of Pan African, but when it comes to the sun, I really miss that element from him, though. So I seek some kind of immaturity in his message, but that's my opinion. You didn't say that.
That's why I say that sometimes you almost think so, but I can assure you, somebody who has grown up in State House all his life, somebody who has been in the military for 20 years, cannot be immature to that extent unless he's doing it deliberately. That's how I assess it, because you've got, I mean, he has grown up in State House. He has grown up near, I mean, around leaders all his life. He has grown up around politicians. And some of the things he does, you almost assume like it's somebody who has never been there. Now, that tells me that it is deliberate. That tells me that what's happening is actually politics. That some of these opinions are given with a political intention behind them. So I normally read between the lines. Um, of course, on Tigray and all those issues, um, I want to say this, that it, it, even those opinions which he gave, personally, I thought they were in good faith, because he said, he stands with Tigray. I think anybody would stand with Tigray based on the propaganda that Tigray has given. Anybody would say, I stand with Tigray if it is true that that there is a massacre in Tigray. I think anybody who claims to be Pan-African would say so, unless of course you then dig deeper and you begin to realize that it is not exactly happening in Tigray the way you think it is happening. So at that point, I thought he was giving his opinion, partly believing that there were atrocities being committed in Tigray. And that brings me forward now to I think last week when he visited Ethiopia. I begin to think that the government of Ethiopia realized that that General Muhoozi, like most other Africans, could have bought into the propaganda that there's a siege in Tigray, that there's a massacre in Tigray. And so his opinion was being informed by the fact that you must oppose anything that resembles a massacre. So maybe he was inviting him to Ethiopia to give him a clear perspective so that he sees things and sees the facts the way they are on the ground, so that it could begin to inform his opinion. Because if you notice, from the time he came back, he's told a bit of a neutral line. It shows that perhaps now he's more aware of the facts. Because I assure you, anybody who hears what's happening in Tigray from the Tigray perspective and does not dig deep to understand the facts that are on the ground is certainly going to say, why are you doing this to the people of Tigray? Anybody with a human heart, because it's a bad thing, assuming it were true. But the fact is that you've got to go far and dig in and understand and get the facts for you to appreciate that what is being told is a lie, and the facts on the ground state that instead you perhaps speak the way he's now beginning to speak. So I see his change of opinion perhaps with respect to that visit to Ethiopia.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. I buy the agreement, uh, two arguments. One is, as a person who grew up in the state house, there's a lot of education, whether it's an academic education or other. So unless he does it deliberately, it cannot be that immature. Number two, that it's. I really want to congratulate the Ethiopian government that it engaged this general or the son of Museveni and explain themselves and show really the reality on the ground, because there was a huge, or not there was, there is still this huge pressure by the West to alienate the country from the neighboring countries, so and making everybody enemy to Ethiopia. So it was really a good step, even if what they say on the media, these neighboring countries, still the Ethiopian government effort to engage them in the discussion and try to show them the reality. That's really a very good job by the PM, I would say. Now let's go to the next question. What can we, if let's assume that General Muhoozi will be the next president of Uganda, what can we expect different? Me as a neighbor, as next to Uganda, from being from Ethiopia, and our interest is the region. So what can the region, the Horn of Africa, the greater Horn of Africa, can expect from General Muhoozi, from that of President Museveni? What will be different?
Okay, now that you say, you're making me to presuppose that Muhoozi becomes the president. Some Ugandans would want to begin stoning you now, because that is how polarized opinion is in Uganda. But honestly, seeing the trend of events, I think it is most likely that he's one of the one or two people who could actually very easily, and whom I think I'm more likely to succeed President Museveni when the president finally chooses to 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 leave office. And I think there is enough goodwill. You have followed on Twitter. He has quite a number of supporters, and it is something in Uganda. But our interest is in the event that he becomes president of Uganda. How do we see him in terms of the region? I think one, Muhoozi has been in the military much of his life, and it is only, I think, in the last 1 year when he has been brought out to wear suits more and be on civilian clothes. And I think it is part of the process of, if in case he's being prepared in a sense, or if he's trying to ready himself for a shot at presidency, he's being gotten into civilian life and to understand politics. And part of the many visits he's having with different leaders, he has had a number of meetings with the president of Kenya. He's a good friend to the president of Rwanda. He calls him uncle. The other one, which perhaps people are not so aware, is that he's also a friend to the president of Egypt, that's LCC, and quite a number of leaders within Africa. But even these meetings and this romance between him and his leaders is a recent phenomenon, or at least publicly, in as far as we know publicly. And I think, like I said, that is part of the process of getting him introduced to the region. So in me trying to understand, what does the region look to I mean, what can the region hope to get from a potential Morsi presidency? I can only evaluate it in terms of, or with respect rather, to the allies he has within the region, to the people whom I see him respect, and to the fact that he has a military background. Otherwise, and then of course maybe his personality, as an individual. Muhoozi is a rather thoughtful person and calm. Like I said, you're going to have to struggle to reconcile his tweets and the person that Muhoozi is. But I've had the privilege of listening to Muhoozi speak, verbally. I've had the privilege of hearing him speak. He's somebody who is quite thoughtful and who takes his time, and also is rather, is a slow speaker. what I mean is is a thoughtful person and not as rushing as people think. And I think all this apparent rashness in his tweets, apparent or deep opinions is part of his gameplay as a politician. But I think it betrays the person that Muhoozi is. So what am I trying to say by this? Um, his military background also gives a bad impression and makes people think, he could end up being a bad person or something like that. But you have got to look at his personality, which I said is rather calm. Then too, you have got to look at some of the few accomplishments that we can associate with him. Um, he seems to be somebody who focuses more on diplomacy, despite those outbursts of bravado, of show. He talks always like a soldier. I'm going to show you, but if you compare his actions, what he has done as by action, his deeds, and you try to relate it with his words, you see a difference. And personally, I prefer to judge somebody based on his actions more than the words. The words are usually used to create an impression. And one of the actions that you could associate with Muhoozi, let's look at what he did between Uganda and Rwanda. You remember we had a border closure between Uganda and Rwanda for over 3 years. And eventually, it's actually Muhoozi. Of course, you can speak about other reasons, but the deadlock and bring an end to that conflict between Uganda and Rwanda was done by Muhoozi. He visited Rwanda, had a conversation with Kagame, President Kagame, about twice, and then the border was open. And I can assure you, everybody credits the opening of that border back to, with the general. Now, that was a diplomatic accomplishment. It had nothing to do with the words and all that. Then the other one is even within the engagements he has had with Kenya, and then recently his visit to Ethiopia, it still shows you a willingness of this kind of willingness to listen to the other side of you, a willingness to find out the other person's position. So I see him focusing more of diplomatic channels more than his words seem to suggest. And I see him while of course I think that at the beginning of his presidency, it will be the first time he will be president. And while I know that he has his own personal opinions and has his own personal way of doing things, you can't take away the fact that, like any other leader, he is going to be influenced by the people around him. Now, why am I saying this? Like I first started by indicating that he's a friend to some of the leaders within, and the most notable one is Kagame. And we begin to see that he keeps referring to Kagame as uncle, and something like that. And that shows you the closer relationship they have. So Kagame is going to have a rather big influence on Muhoozi, in large part because Muhoozi actually has a lot of respect for Kagame. Then also the other person who may not have direct influence, but whom I know will have an influence on him, is the president of Egypt. Like I said, Muhoozi had his military training in Egypt. That's one. And two, he has had a number of personal engagements with the president of Egypt. So if I imagine that he became president today, those individuals would have some level of influence on him in as far as dealings with the region are concerned. I think they would have a big influence on his foreign policy, on how he deals with other regions. Otherwise, at a personal level of Moses, it's so difficult for us to say how he will deal, because he hasn't yet become, and also he hasn't been in politics long enough for us to judge his political opinions based on that.
Interesting, great analysis as usual. Brother Lambert, really thank you very much for that. I always enjoy and learn a lot. I was thinking as you explain, how he's not only in Uganda, but by meeting leaders in the region. There seems to be a new thing unfolding in the region, when you are, this potential candidate for presidency in your country, then not only you campaign in your own country, but also you go and look for support for the regional leaders, like William Ruto, has been a very good, not has been, still a very good friend of Museveni. And also now we see with potential candidate of General Muhoozi, how he has preparing the ground or testing the water with by meeting the regional leaders. So that seems a new in thing, or it has been there. I don't know, but for me, it's new. Uh, Now let's talk about this African political dynasties. I mean, it's not only. By the way, let me say this first. It's not only for Africa. America also has it. We have seen George Bush one, George Bush two. I mean, it's everywhere. But in Africa, we have in Kenya alone, we have the Kenyattas, the Moi family. We have in Gabon the Bongos, in Chad the Dabis. Who am I missing? I think in Togo also. Oh, in Ghana the Nana Akufo Ados. He is also the son of the priest. There was his father was also a president. I think also there's a rumor that South Sudan Salva Kiir is kind of grooming his son to be a president. Now, what are the pros and cons of this? I mean, when I think of this African political dynasty, what comes to my mind is its negative impact, because it doesn't give others the chance to come to power. We will see same old blood. I mean, it's good to bring a new blood in the leadership. I believe that. What's your take on this?
Just before I come to that, Mallet, you spoke of a trend where we see incoming presidents trying to seek for regional attention. It is very important, especially for the new entrants, because those who are already in power are going to have a big influence on whether or not you become president. It is now more than your country, because um, you see, at the end of the day, you've got to have blessings from regional leaders. And within East Africa, Museveni is significant. That's why you saw Ruto quite frequenting Uganda. And now, also, President Museveni, for Moses' case, President Museveni realizes that perhaps leaders within the region will outlast him. I mean, by virtue of age. So if he's going to introduce Muhoozi to presidency, then he has got to have friends from within the region, in that respect. So coming forward to that, dynasties. You began by indicating it well, Mallet. You said it seems to have a bad connotation in Africa. I personally think there is no problem with the son or grandson of a previous leader becoming president. I mean, if we begin to think that the leadership is about, there should be no kind of dynasty in leadership. I mean, there shouldn't be a relative of the previous leader in president. I think we become unfair, because at the end of the day, these are citizens who by the right of their citizenship in the country, can become president. And we have seen this. It's actually in other countries in the West, they don't see it as a problem. In Africa, it is seen as a very big problem. But I think that is because of the manner in which they come into power, and that is my personal concern. It is not about Muhoozi becoming the next president of Uganda, because I mean, it's not about saying it shouldn't be because he's President Museveni's son. I think it should be about how does he become president. How did George Bush in the U.S. Jr. become president? That's what we need to worry about. It is the process that they follow to become president that should worry people. If we go with the ideal case and we say there's an election in a democracy, he presents himself as a candidate, the people get to choose and they elect him, are you going to say, no, don't become president because you are the son to the former president? Now, that doesn't work. So the concern, and this is what should concern Africans, is the manner in which the sons or the nephews of previous leaders become president. Does it follow the normal procedure, the normal, arrangement that everyone else is subjected to? Don't forget there are two sides of the coin. Even for these sons of leaders, they usually inherit, one, the advantages, of their, like now for Muhoozi, the day he chooses to become president, assuming he follows and of course we are hoping, and President Museveni keeps saying that it is the people of Uganda, and that's his argument, who will decide who leads them. Now, if he presents himself for an election, obviously he's going to have to inherit some of the mistakes of his father. Then also, but also he will inherit some of the advantages of his father, of having been president. Now, these are going to influence whether or not people choose him. But for me, the bottom line is he has got to present himself as any other person would present himself. And I think that is the idea. And if he does that and the people elect him, you can't say he shouldn't be president. What we only don't want is for him to use the advantages of being a child, a son to his father, and to make himself president without following the constitutionally mandated processes. That's what we should be worried about. So it is not about it is good or bad. Our concern as Africans should be whether or not the children of previous leaders, go through the due process. A good example is Kenya. The current president Uhuru Kenyatta contested first for presidency and actually lost and went back. Then again he contested and won, and he has now won twice. Should we now say because his father was once president, he shouldn't become president? I think taking the example of Kenya, we have to say he offered himself for elections and the people elected him. We only don't want the father to force him on people, maybe by giving him power without following the democratic process. That for me is where the concern should arise from, not whether or not he becomes president.
Yeah, but mostly I think it's a abuse the way they come to president, the way they are presented. It seems that because of their privilege. But quickly though, does the constitution allow him to?
Yes, it allows him, just like it allows any Ugandan. If he wants to become president, he simply has to retire from the army and then offer himself for office. And if he's elected, he becomes president. Of course, the only thing you can question is whether or not, since he is already a part of the system, whether there will be free and fair elections. But
Yeah.
the first step is to say, I'm offering myself for president. And then he's in the ballot, and whether we vote him or we don't vote him. But like I said, we go back to saying, once he offers himself, will there be a free and fair election? But that is an everyday question, which can only be proven once it has happened.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to give a quick, view here on the comment section. I hear you, read you, Red CUs, who is saying, as an Eritrean, I don't want to see Ethiopia destabilized. I want to see Ethiopia stable and at peace. And then another one from Ethiopia, I think Salamau, it says, and as an Ethiopian, I wish stability, prosperity, peace for Eritrea. That's beautiful. That's what we want. I mean, if there is a war in Ethiopia, definitely Eritrea will be affected. Uganda will be affected. Somalia will be affected. So a peace in one country is a peace for everyone. The other one is somebody was asking actually the issue of the border, whether it is resolved now, the one between Uganda and Rwanda.
Yes, it was resolved. Actually, after Muhoozi went about twice, the border which had been closed for like 3 years was finally opened. So now those ones in Uganda can cross to Rwanda, and those in Rwanda can cross to Uganda. Actually, until that point, the president of Rwanda had not been to Uganda, I think in about 5 years. But the moment it was opened, his first visit to Uganda was to attend a birthday party by General Muhoozi, where he was actually the chief guest in that birthday party.
All right. PASC official has commented, just claiming to be a Pan-Africanist is of little value, but to play popularism game in some sections. What's more important is analyzing the internal and external policies he puts into practice. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that will be the end of our discussion. Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, but at last, actually, sorry, before I close this, it's important to clarify, is there anything that you would say there's something that people don't understand about General Muhoozi. You as a Ugandan has the advantage to understand, and others, for us who just see his tweets, don't understand. If you can say something, I'll give you the floor.
Incidentally, Ugandans don't seem to understand Muhoozi more than, I think outsiders might be getting to understand Muhoozi more than we understand him in Uganda, because locally he's seen as a soldier. That's one, and you will never see Muhoozi appear on local television or on local media discussing political matters, because he's basically a serving soldier. So we never get to see Muhoozi the politician. Much of the opinion that people are now building about Muhoozi in Uganda is actually based on what he has been tweeting, which is open to the
Yeah.
to the to the whole world. Otherwise, and as you will know, Twitter is not something that is the kind of media that the common Ugandan has. We only know that maybe it is now the role of effect to the public. So the outside world is getting an opinion of Muhoozi that actually we in Uganda don't hold, because the Muhoozi we have known over the years has been so calm, has been so quiet, because we never see him in the media. It never gets to discuss anything in the local media, which the common man mostly accesses. What we now know, and what brought Muhoozi to the forefront, was actually the last year, his last birthday celebration. He celebrated his birthday for like 3 months. We had parties throughout the country where he would come, and even then he was on military fatigue. So Muhoozi remains an enigma. It is difficult for us to have a clear-cut opinion on him, because he's a soldier who hasn't openly unrolled his silk gloves of politics. But one thing I know, the man's personality, that's what I choose to judge him on. Muhoozi is a very calm and very calculative person. Maybe that is partly because of his military training and his military background. Because forget about the seeming rashness in his tweets. Like I said, that's politics. And most people are going to make the mistake of judging him based on that. I can tell you one thing, because normally I have discussions with some colleagues in Uganda, and they make the same mistake, which I think the international community could make, of thinking, they say that the easiest way to get power from President Museveni is to allow him to give it to his son, Muhoozi. They seem to see him as reckless. They seem to see him as rashy. And I can assure you, they are all judging him based on those outbursts, which I think is a very big miscalculation. Those outbursts are politics. You've got to look at this man's personality, and he can make a very firm and very long-lasting leader, because he's very calculative, it takes his time, and is very thoughtful. I can assure you that is the biggest misunderstanding people have. Do not judge Muhoozi based on his tweets. You will have a very different opinion of the man. Personally, I think either that, I think that's politics. Is trying to give a mask to the public that seems to show a weakness, that seems to make people seem to either undermine him and think he's not up to the task, when actually he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I was stuck. I was reading something. For one, General Muhoozi Red CUs says or comments, General Muhoozi has to step down from his military role before he could take a presidency role. I guess she said, yeah,
Yes,
he should, right?
that's what's in the constitution, which he has to, of course.
Even to ask as a diplomat, to act as a diplomat, he should first.
Actually, that's how it's
down.
supposed to be. But like I said, those are some of the advantages he enjoys for being the son to the president. But also because ideally, okay, honestly, in reality, he shouldn't be giving some of the opinions he gives at his given that he's a serving soldier, because we have examples of some soldiers still in the UPDF who previously gave opinions much easier than the ones he's giving, and they were subjected to court martial straight away based on
Oh,
that, being blamed. They were taken to court martial, apparently for having gotten involved in political affairs. But obviously, Muhoozi seems to enjoy the fact that he's a son to the sitting president, so he's a bit of special. But also, partly because the truth is the man is powerful within the Ugandan military circles. I can assure you, it's not just Commander Land Forces. The majority of the command of the UPDF are actually his acolytes. There are people with whom he took at first, when he was joining the military, when he was leaving university, he took them for training, took them to the special forces which he founded, and now they have taken over the leadership positions within the military. So the guy has complete control over the Ugandan military. So partly he's a powerful person, I can assure you, because he has friends who owe him a lot in key positions within the military setup. So even by his own right, Muhoozi is very powerful in the military circles of Uganda. So perhaps
So,
that gives him the clout,
so
to speak whatever he wants. And I think the only person Muhoozi fears in Uganda is the father, nobody else. I mean, that is how powerful he has become within the military in Uganda.
that's dangerous. So PASC the official PSCF official says it looks like an abbreviation. You believe he should become, meaning General Muhoozi should become president when his dad has power of the incumbent. His father has done very little to raise the living standards for the vast majority of his people. I think in defense of Lambert here, I mean, Lambert will speak for himself, but in defense of him as a person who has been listening to him, you are saying he should be given the chance. He cannot be denied of the opportunity, or not the opportunities, that he can bring himself as a candidate, just like any other Ugandan citizen is. Of course, there is a possibility for him to inherit the good and bad from his father. But again, it's only up to him to prove whether he would like to correct or repeat those mistakes.
That is true. I think you've answered it for me well. Is Ugandan, is Ugandan. I think, let me give it back to Ethiopia. If Prime Minister Abiy has a son, you don't want to say that he should never be Prime Minister of Ethiopia because Prime Minister Abiy has been Prime Minister. What you want is for him to present himself for election, and then you decide whether or not to elect him or not. And if you elect him, he becomes president. If you don't, it does not become. So like I said, it goes back to the process that is followed for somebody to become president. Otherwise, we can't disenfranchise others simply because of their parents. It is not only in presidency. You can't have the children carry on the blame for their parents and lose the opportunity to become something they want simply because their parents were. What we ask for is that the due process, is followed for everyone else.
Hopefully, he took his lesson and he will not tweet, at least on when it comes to Ethiopia, those controversial tweets, and continue to be neutral, because we see that after, when he started to be neutral, he got all the bashes, from from TPLF activists on social media. Somebody asked, was it General Muhoozi behind the tweets during that crucial moment in Addis Salamite? Yes, he is.
Yes.
Somebody is talking about, that's another topic for another day. For 2 consecutive days, the others were following, and from some mild research, 3 of them were Ethiopians in Uganda. I don't know really which topic it is, but I thought first in my first reading, I understood it, the TPLFs being trained in Uganda. So that by itself is a topic in another time. But thank you very much, Lambert. Definitely we will follow up. And thank you. And thank you for the audience, and those of you who are not a family of Connect Africa, please be a family. So every Thursday, actually tomorrow also, we are going to stream. We are going to talk about the international organizations which are also sponsoring TPLF now in Ethiopia. But in general, not only in Ethiopia, this is a Pan-African media platform. We talk about how, the same international community, the same international organization are warlords, behind those rebels, and sponsoring in every way, arming So please be with us at the same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Africa time or 8 p.m. Central European time. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Lambert. Until
All right,
tomorrow.
welcome. Thank you. Tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.